Welcome back to Minchah Yom Kippur. We have a really exciting service. We have some phenomenal Torah readers and Haftarah reader, and then Scott's going to lead us in this discussion of a strange and wonderful time in our people's history. We'll put it that way. We're going to jump right in. We're going to start with our Taurus Service. You'll find that on page 670 of your Machzor. Would anybody here care to open the Ark? Care to come up and open the Ark? I'm just going to open it all. Please do. Andrea Pantabona, please come up and open our Ark that our Torah may come out. Thank you. Vayhi bin Aharon, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai v'yafutzu yevacha, v'yanusum es anecha mipanacha, Imitzion tetzeh Torah, dvar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael, b'kedushato. Yadelu Adonai iti, unoroma mashmo yachdav. Adonai hagedula v'hagebura, v'hadiferet v'hanitzatzeho. Yivor b'shnei b'ba'aretz, Yishleka Adonai amadan v'hadiferet. Adonai Eloheinu, Our first Torah reading, all of these come from Vayikra or Leviticus chapter 18. And I will need folks for our first two aliyot. So, Rabbi Emeritus Ira Corino, may I call you for the first aliyah? Is that okay? You turn on your video, so I'm going to assume that's a yes. Fabulous. Shelley, you're going to need to give him an invitation to unmute. Our first aliyah will be chanted by Joy Sylvie. Joy, if you want to come up, find your spot. And Rabbi Corino, I'm going to find your Hebrew name. He probably remembers. I'm sure he remembers it, but I need to call. Ben. Moshe ופריד, תודה. ויעזור ויגן ויושיע לכל החוסים בו ונאמר אמן. הכל אבוגות אל אלוהינו תנו כבוד לתורה. יעמוד הרב יצחק אריה בן משה ופרידה לעלייה הראשונה. ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו.
ואתם הרוויחים באדוני אלוהיכם חיים כולכם היום.
ואתם הדבקים באדוני אלוהיכם חיים כולכם היום.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamborach. Baruchu et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem ani Adonai Elohechem. Kema'aseh eretz Mitzrayim asher yeshavtem bach lo ta'asu. וכמעשה ארץ כנען אשר אני מביא אתכם שמה לא תעשו ובחוקותיהם לא תלכו את משפטי תעשו ואת חוקותיי תשמרו ללכת בהם אני אדוני אלוהיכם ושמרתם את חוקותיי ואת משפטי אשר יעשה אותם האדם וחי בהם אני אדוני.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Our second aliyah will be read by Sandra Kassen-Deerdorf. Jonathan, may I call you up for an aliyah? Toda. Ya'amod Yehonatan ben Moshe Ufegel l'aliyah hashni'ah. And our second aliyah, our second reading is also on page 674.
Baruch hu el Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Ish ish el kol sha'ar b'sar. Ish el kol b'sha'ar b'saro lo tikravu legalot eva ani Adonai. Ervat avicha ve'ervat imcha lo tegale. Imcha hi lo tegale ervata. Ervat eshet avicha lo tegale ervat avicha hi. Ervat achotecha bat avicha uvat imecha. Moledet bait umoledet chutz lo tegale ervatan. Ervat bat bincha avot. Ervat bat bincha עובת פיתך לא תגלה ערוותן, כי ערוותן הנה. ערוות בת אשת אביך מולדת אביך, אחותך היא לא תגלה ערוותה. ערוות אחות אביך לא תגלה, שאר אביך היא. ערוות אחות אמך לא תגלה, כי שאר אמך היא. ערוות אחי אביך לא תגלה, אל אשתו לא תקרא דודתך היא. ערוות כלתך לא תגלה, אשת בנך היא לא תגלה ערוותה. ערוות אשת אחיך לא תגלה, ערוות אחיך היא. ערוות אישה וביתה לא תגלה, את בת בינה ואת בת ביתה לא תיקח לגלות ערוותה, שערה הנה שימה היא. ואישה אל אחותה לא תיקח, לצרור לגלות ערוותה עליה בחייה, ואל אישה בנידת תימתה לא תקרב לגלות ערוותה, ואל אשת עמיתך לא תיתן שכבתך לזרה לטמאה, ומזרעך לא תיתן להעביר למולך, ולא תחלל את שם אלוהיך, אני אדוני.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
For the third Aliyah, which is also our maftir, I call up Maury Corno, who's going to read for us from the book of Yonah. And our third Aliyah will be chanted by Phil Platkow, and it starts on 676. Ya'amod Moshe Lebel ben Harab Yitzchak Aryeh v'Gitaleah el la'aliyah ha'maftirah.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'na'atan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Ve'et zachar lo tishka mishkavei isha. Toeva hi u'chol behema lo titein shechavtecha letim ava ve'isha lo tamod lifnei behema l'riva tival hu. Al titamu bechol ele ki bechol ele nitamu hagoyim asher ani mishaleach mipenechem v'titma haaretz efkod avona aleha v'taki haaretz et yosheveha ushmartem atem et chilkotai v'mishpotai v'lo tasu mikol ha'toivot ele ha'ezrach v'hager hagar b'tochechem ki et kol ha'toivot ha'el asu anshe ha'aretz asher lifnechem v'titma ha'aretz V'lo taki ha'aretz etchem v'tamachem ota כאשר קאה את הגוי אשר לפניכם, היא כל אשר יעשה מכל התועבות האלה, ונכרתו הנפשות העשות מקרב עמם, ושמרתם את משמרתי, לבלתי עשות מחוקות התועבות אשר נעשו לפניכם, וכל תטמאו בהם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
At this time, I call up Richard and Eileen Chalik to be our Magbia and Golelet by Zoom. I and Phil will be your hands in the sanctuary, and we are at the bottom of page 680. Please rise in body or in spirit as our Torah scroll is lifted and wrapped.
V'zos haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Morashat Keilat Yaakov, Morashat Keilat Yaakov, Morashat Keilat Yaakov, Torah Tziva lanu Moshe.
As much as or as little as you'd like. Sukkot. Shacharit, right here. The first two? Okay. Ending here. 1, 2. Got it.
Our Haftarah reading comes from the book of Yonah. We're going to hear the first 2 chapters where a lot of the drama lives this afternoon. And it starts on page 682. Blessings before the Haftarah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzah b'divreihem hane'emarim b'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek. Vayehi dvar Adonai el Yonah ben Amitai lemor kuhum lechelin העיר הגדולה הוקרא עליה, כי עלתה רעתם לפניי. ויקום יונה לברוח תרשישה מלפני אדוני, וירד יפו, וימצא אונייה בער תרשיש, ויתן שכרה, וירד בה לבוא עמהם תרשישה מלפני אדוני. ואדוני הטיל רוח גדולה על הים, ויהי סער גדול בים, והאונייה השבה להישבר. ויראו המלאכים, ויזעקו איש אל אלוהיו, ויטילו את הכלים אשר באונייה על הים להקל מעליהם. ויונה ירד אריה קטעי הספינה, וישכב וירדם. ויקרב אליו רב הכובל, ויאמר לו מלאך נרדם, קום קרא אל אלוהיך, אולי יתעשת אלוהים לנו ולא נאבד. ויאמרו איש אל רעהו, לכו ונפילה גורלות, ונדע בשל מי הרעה הזאת לנו, ויפילו גורלות, ויפול הגורל על יונה. ויאמרו אליו, הידע נא לנו באשר למי הרעה הזאת לנו. מה מלאכתך ומאין תבוא, מה ארצך ומאיזה עם אתה. ויאמר עליהם, עברי אנוכי, ואת אדוני אלוהי השמיים אני ירא, אשר עשה את הים ואת היבשה. ויראו האנשים יראה גדולה, ויאמרו אליו, מה זאת עשית? כי ידעו האנשים, כי מלפני אדוני הוא בורח, כי הגיד להם. ויאמרו אליו, מה נעשה לך? וישתוק הים מעלינו, כי הים הולך וסוער. ויאמר עליהם, שאוני והטילוני אל הים, וישתוק הים מעליכם, כי יודע אני, כי בשלי הסהר הגדול הזה עליכם. ויחתרו האנשים להשיב אל היבשה, ולא יכולו, כי הים הולך וסוער עליהם. ויקראו אל אדוני, ויאמרו, אנא אדוני אל נא נאבדה בנפש האיש הזה, ואל תיתן עלינו דם נקי, כי אתה אדוני כאשר חפצת עשית. ויישאו את יונה ותילוהו אל הים, ויעמוד הים מזפו. ויראו האנשים יראה גדולה את אדוני, ויזבחו זבח לאדוני, וידרו נדרים. וימן אדוני דג גדול לבלוע את יונה, ויהי יונה בימי הדג Shlosha hayamim u'shlosha leilot. V'titpalel Yonah el Adonai Elohav mimei hadaga. Vayomer karati mitzarali el Adonai v'yaneni mi beten sheol shivti shamata koli Betashlicheni mitzulaha bilvav yamim vanahar yisoveveni kol mishbarecha vegalecha alai avaru va'ani amarti nigrashti neged Einecha ach osif lahabit el heichal kodshecha Afafuni mayim ad nefesh tehom yisoveveni suhuv chavush laroshi lekitz veharim yaradati haaretz berichecha ba'adi laolam v'tal mishachat chayai Adonai Elohai Behit atef alai nafshi et Adonai zacharti bitavo elecha tefilati el hayokal kodshecha mishamrim havle shavaka stam ya'azovu va'ani bekol todah es bechalach asher nidarti Ashalema Yeshua Ladonai Vayomer Adonai Ladag Gayiko et Yonah Al Hayabasha Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Tzor Kol Haolamim Zadik Bechol Hadorot Ha'el HaNe'eman HaOmer Ve'oseh Ha'medaber U'mekayim Shekol Devarav Emet V'Tzedek Ne'eman Atahu Adonai Eloheinu V'Ne'emanim Devarecha V'Devarecha Midvarecha Akor Lo Yashuv Rekam Ki El Melech Ne'eman V'Rachaman Ata Baruch Ata Adonai Ha'el HaNe'eman Bechol Devarav Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu v'la'alu nefesh toshia b'mheira v'yameinu Baruch Ata Adonai misameach Tzion b'vaneha Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu be'Eliyahu Hanavi Avdecha uv'malchut Beit David Meshichecha b'mheira yavo v'yagel libenu al kisolo yeshev zar v'lo yinchalu od acherim et kivodo ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo shelo yichben ero leolam va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Mahagen David.
Beautiful reading. Toda Rabah to Mori for a beautiful, beautiful reading. We are going to return our Torah to the Ark. So I call up Erwin and Jane Rosenston online to be our Ark openers. Shelley can spotlight her account. Jane, if you are able, Erwin and Jane, if one of you or both of you are able to turn your cameras on, then we can spotlight you. Shelley, could you send them an invitation to turn their cameras on?
Yes, oh, there we go.
To that.
I've sent them invitations, but they haven't accepted.
Okay. Well, we see that you are here, Jane and Erwin. So thank you for being here. And Phil and I will be your hands in the sanctuary and open the Ark. And please rise and body your spirit. יהללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו. הודו על ארץ ושמיים, וירם כרם. חסידה לבני ישראל, עם קרובו, הללויה, הללויה. לאדוני הארץ ומלואה, תהילה ליושביה, כי הוא הימים יסדה, עליה תכננה, מיעלה בהר אדוני, וממקום קודשו, לפי כפיים ובשמיה, אשר לא מצא שלמתי, אלא ישר מרמה, תסתרך עמק אדוני, וצחק אל עלי חוזרו, אורתו, והשיבה יעקב סלע, זהו שאביך השם, וינשאו כתבי עולם ויבוא מלך הכבוד. מיהו זה מלך הכבוד? אדוני יזוז וגיבור, אדוני גיבור מלחמה. זו שערים בהם, וינשאו כתבי עולם ויבוא מלך הכבוד. מיהו זה מלך הכבוד? אדוני יזוז וגיבור, אדוני צבאות ומלך הכבוד. Selah. Top of page 694, please join me. ובנוחו יאמר שוב אדוני רבבות אלפי ישראל, כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם, תורתי אל תעזבון, עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה, ותומכיה מאושר דרכיה, דרכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני לך ונעש שובה, חדש ימינו כקדם. Please be seated. Andy, is Scott here still? All right, in just a minute or two, we are going to be led in a discussion of a really juicy piece of Talmud by Scott Hanula. And I'm going to read you a story on page 697 to get us in here. It was late in the afternoon on Yom Kippur. Yeah. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak had been praying in the Berdichev synagogue all day. This was a famous Hasidic Rebbe. For a moment, he closed his tired eyes. Suddenly, he was before the judgment seat of God. The fate of humanity was being weighed in the great scales. Alas, the sins were heavy. Prospects for humanity were bleak. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak pleaded with God, if you wanted us to be angels, you should have let us remain in the Garden of Eden. But you sent us out into the world, and the daily struggle often puts us into the hands of sin. God was moved and motioned the rabbi to a chair at God's side. The rabbi continued. His appeal was sincere and convincing. The scales began to tilt in humanity's favor. Suddenly, the rabbi heard a piteous cry. He looked down to earth. in the tiny Berdichev synagogue, Chaim, the washerman, fasting on this holiest day, had fainted from hunger. Levi Yitzchak rose to leave, to hurry back to earth, to conclude the service so that Chaim could break his fast. A note to service leaders everywhere. A voice called after him, Levi Yitzchak, where are you going? You were on the verge of saving the world. Replied Levi Yitzchak, where is it written that the price of salvation must be the life of Chaim the washerman? And he left. As he hurried on his way, a great chorus of angels sang, Levi Yitzchak, you are saving the world. So concludes our story. I want to invite up Scott Hanula to lead us in a discussion of a very, very special and unusual Yom Kippur. Reading table is yours.
Do we have the presentation?
I believe so. Yeah,
It'd be hard to read on that side, so I'll give you a little.
there we go.
If we can make it into full screen.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Scott Hanula. If you haven't already heard, I'm the treasurer of the board at the Temple Emanu-El, and my family's generally pretty involved in a fair amount of things here. So one of the things I've undertaken in the past, I don't know, is this like a little over a year now? 2 years, is I've started reading Daf Yomi, page a day. I don't do it in the Hebrew or Aramaic. It's all in English for me, but I didn't realize what an endeavor it would be when I first started it. It's years long. And it's been kind of a neat process for me. And one of the things that started happening was kind of organically, Vera had invited me about once every 2 weeks. The two of us get together on Friday around lunchtime, and we spend about an hour talking about the daily page from Talmud. So today we're going to talk about Moed Katan 9a9. There's a kind of unique paragraph in there that kind of stunned us, and we stopped for a minute and we kind of laughed and we talked a little bit about it, and then we said, we'll have to remember this for Yom Kippur to make it a topic. So we did remember it, and here I am. So we can go to the next page, please. Let's see. So it's hard to see over in the side there, but like, what is Talmud? Basically, Talmud is Hebrew for learning. We used basically the Babylonian Talmud, which is Talmud Bavli. And it was written following the destruction of the Second Temple. And its main text is the Mishnah, and it's followed by the Gemara. There's two of these opinions on Torah and things we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to live our life as Jews. Much of it is very ancient in thought. There's some quirky things in there. When I first started doing it, I thought this would be interesting. And then it spent the first really tractate was nothing but how to measure your doorway so that it was appropriate. And it's like all these things that were in there. It's neat. And then what's really in there is the rabbi's explanations on things. So over on the right-hand side is an English one that's hard to see. In the middle is a whole bunch of words describing like, hey, this is where the Mishnah is going to be. There's a layout of what the title and the tractate number is, and the commentaries are all on the side. And the interesting thing about the commentaries is they keep track of both the winning argument and losing argument, which isn't all that different than what we do in the Supreme Court right now, right? There's the dissenting opinion and that sort of thing, which is kind of neat. So you get to see everybody's opinion in there, but there's a little bit of the game of telephone in there too, because it'll say, Rob Steve said to, Rob Mona that Rob so-and-so said this other thing, and then they'll say it. So sometimes you have to decide, is it really what they meant? So it's a little interesting in there. And it's printed together on this page by page basis. And there are, I'll have a hard time reading it from that far, but there are 6 of these setarim, which are, these setting, places, and then the orders. And then there's 68 mashkahot, 517 of the parakim, and then there are 2,711 dapim, which are the pages. There's 2,711 of these pages. So, 365 days a year. It's like is that like 7-year period. So it's a page a day of reading this. So if you go to the next page, please. This is the real example. This is the one we're going to talk about today. This is not today's daf, by the way. but this is the one we're going to talk about today. This is Moed Katan 9a. And Moed Katan is like minor festival, little festival. So it's kind of getting into some of like, what do you do on these other festivals, these things that come up. And this page here in the middle, they have the same layout as what we saw in the English on the other side, and they have a whole discussion on that. And this we'll get through a little bit here. So if we can go to the next slide. One of my favorite bands when I was in high school and college was Talking Heads. And well, how did we get here? You know, and so David Byrne a little bit. So kind of figuring out like, how did we get here? Why are we talking about this particular page today? And I'll tell you this, like I said, I was studying with Cantor Vera and we were stunned to read the paragraph. And I think Vera, you'll attend to test the fact that we really stopped for a moment. We're like, what? Let's read that again. And I'll read the piece on the side over there for everybody who can't see it. It says, there's a whole bunch of discussion before and after this. So this is the only part I want to get into is that apropos of the discussion of the celebration of Solomon's dedication of the temple, the Gemara relates that Rabbi Parnak said that Rabbi Yochanan said, this is the telephone thing, that year, the Jewish people did not observe Yom Kippur. As the 7-day celebration of the dedication of the temple coincided with Yom Kippur, and all 7 days were celebrated with feasting. And the people were worried and said, perhaps the enemies of the Jewish people, a euphemism for the Jewish people themselves, you know, I am my own worst enemy type of thing, right? That's what they're getting at there, have become liable to be destroyed for the transgression of eating on Yom Kippur, which is punishable by karet, which is basically what the expulsion from the community. But then a divine voice issued forth and said to them, all of you are designated for life in the world to come. So it's okay, right? So this whole thing, my summary and like just on this thing was like, hey, remember the year we didn't observe Yom Kippur? And the answer is, sure, it was no big deal because the divine voice said it was okay. If, you know, maybe one of those years we'll get one of those too. So if we go to the next slide. It's my thoughts based on my study, at least. I can tell you I don't spend a ton of time on these. I did spend some time on this one because it was interesting and Vera asked me. Some of them are very deep and I just read through them. Some of them, when Vera and I are talking, we get stuck on one paragraph. We get stuck on this one, obviously. So my notes here is that a lot of this has to do with King Solomon's consecration of the first temple, which took place 2 weeks prior and ended prior to Sukkot. So timing wise, that's when this happened, right? So a new altar requires sacrifices and eating them, right? So we make these animal sacrifices, somebody has to eat them. And then there's a whole theory that we shouldn't be mixing one joyous occasion or one holiday with another. And then they say there's no joy without eating or drinking. So the decision was made that they would celebrate this, you know, at the bottom I said the enemies of Jewish people, not what you think. We got into that in this prior slide, but the decision was made to go ahead and celebrate. So then I said, hey, some of my observations on this are, we were no longer wanderers, right? We didn't have this Mishkan that we're hauling around to getting into. So we had this permanent place to worship, which was pretty exciting, right? Very exciting for the people at the time, I imagine. But what I got into is this is, as far as I can tell, poor project management, right? If you're going to end a project, you may want to do it at a time when it doesn't interfere with probably one of the biggest holidays in your religion. So that's where we are. So what a time to finish a temple. So it's a landmark event, unintended, for the Jewish people, right? We have this thing where it goes on. So just think about this. If you got the Shavuot last week on Friday, and Cantor Vera wrote, hey, good news, everybody. Yom Kippur is canceled. Come to the temple. We're going to have a feast. Have some explaining to do, probably, right? But that's what happened here. This is pretty exciting, kind of a neat thing to get into. So with that led in there, what I thought we could do today, if we go to the next slide, is get into some small discussion groups. Doesn't have to, you know, I don't know how we're going to split up the folks online, but maybe into one group there and a couple groups here. So small discussion groups is some things to think about, you know, because when I got into this, I said, if we removed Yom Kippur 1 year from your life, that would mean something. So what is your personal connection to Yom Kippur? would you be okay without Yom Kippur for 1 year? Right? And I would guess that there's probably some nuances on that. So is Yom Kippur necessary every year? I mean, you don't have to answer all these questions. Well, what kind of event personally or collectively in your life or in the community would you think is worth considering feasting on Yom Kippur? Like, what would lead to that? And the other thing is just like any other thoughts you have to share as you kind of read through the idea that 1 year we decided, let's eat. So I'll leave it with that. We can break off into probably, I think, the online folks, and then maybe
Shelley, if you will make 3 breakout groups, that will get a good
mix.
set of groups, and folks, you're going to need to accept her invitation to the breakout groups. How long are we?
Probably like we don't want to go too long, right? So maybe like 10 minutes. Be good.
All right, we'll say 10-minute breakout room
Is
session.
that too short, you think, or yeah, 15 minutes is good.
15 minutes. And then folks here, what's that?
Probably like 5 would be the most you'd want to have, right?
Okay, I'm gonna do the camp thing. I'm gonna count everybody off while Shelley helps folks online get into discussion groups. Scott, will you tell us the questions one more time?
So the questions are, what is your personal connection to Yom Kippur? Would it be okay for you to not have Yom Kippur 1 year? Is Yom Kippur necessary every year? And what kind of event, personally or collectively, would you consider feasting on Yom Kippur?
All right. 1, 2.
I personally have football parents against set up the fasting for a big part. They did it once. So yeah. Yeah. So that's that single piece. So it's exactly. Not factual, but thinking about that, so they must not arrives. How was your kid as a result? It made it so things change. We are obligated to change. And we follow this. That's and people long snaps. We have been so it's a little I would still still since that and then he can yeah. It's like people like so we did our I'm sorry so much for his always also my difference because we used to see things like it was just
So the things that happen to me. So, like, But it's like. But we got scouts go. This is very good. This is true. So process.
It's about anywhere to
So ask Shelley can you bring everybody back, please, from the breakout rooms?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, so as everybody's coming back, I just want to take a little time, not too long, but a little bit to kind of share some thoughts. Hopefully everybody had a pretty good discussion around this one and some thinking about it. Probably put some people on the spot. I want to put Phil on the spot. So Phil, can you come up and what kind of thoughts did you share in your group? What kind of ideas?
We didn't talk about it at all, really, Scott. Thank you very much.
Great. You'll be in remedial school for this.
Back to Hebrew school with me. So we talked about a whole bunch of different things, right? So from this maybe being a utopian type of situation to some who felt there was no way that we could, not have a Yom Kippur. All of us have had, even those who Jews by choice recently, have some sense of Yom Kippur and the importance of the day.
Good. So kind of interesting there to find that there isn't like something somebody could put their finger on, right? It would have to be a communal thing that's pretty big. Anybody from the group that was over here want to share? Come on. Maury.
What often happens in the Talmud, I suppose, we ended up, the conversation just led to having more questions. We said, Yom Kippur is kind of the culmination of 10 days of repentance at the end, the shofar is blown, and everyone hopes that they are forgiven and sealed in the, it starts with Rosh Hashanah. So the question was, back in those days, both when the temple was there and pre-temple, how was Rosh Hashanah? The year they did it, the year they, partied instead of repenting and fasting on Yom Kippur. Did they celebrate Rosh Hashanah? Did they have 10 days of Tshuva? And then 3 or 4 days into Tshuva, did they say, heck with this, let's throw a party to temple? So it led to more questions with how those both before celebrated free, they don't touch, and once a week.
Yeah, that's good input. Like the idea that you don't know what the circumstances were before well enough to understand how important that item was.
You know, we're not celebrating holidays now, like they were.
Right.
Thousands of years ago. Plus, at that point in time, they were doing sacrifices for different holidays.
Right.
You know, everything was completely different. So, you know, there's more questions than answers.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only other one we have any kind of inkling around that is around Hanukkah. Like, what was it like when you had a rededication? But it isn't comparable to skipping Yom Kippur by any means. Yeah. Anybody online have something they want to share? I don't know who has their hand up, but I'm glad that you raised it. Who is that?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm Anna,
Anna.
and I was in a group with Irene and Robert, and we talked about the importance of Yom Kippur to us, and I don't think any of us really wanting to give it up at all, and we were talking about some of the ways that it was important. And one thing that was said is that even if you find yourself not participating regularly in Jewish life and going to temple, especially with all the logistical barriers that we've had to doing that for Yom Kippur to be a really important day to come back and do that. And then we also talked about Yom Kippur as sort of the Shabbat of Shabbats, like the real time to reflect and return and think about people that you may have forgotten about during the year, and think about what you could have done better and what would like to do better in the coming year. And then we also talked about throughout history when Jewish people have been oppressed and times when tormentors would make food on Yom Kippur to torment Jewish people, and how so many people were really committed and they still didn't eat on Yom Kippur. So the idea of giving it up was something that we, I think all three of us felt not inclined to go that way. And it was a really interesting set of discussion questions, because it really gives you a chance to think clearly about, well, why are we doing this? It's not just because we're told to do it, but to really think carefully about what the value is. So it was a good discussion.
That's good. I see a little bit of a parallel with what Cantavira was talking about earlier today with like coming home. You know, what I found for a lot of people, and you think about discussions about Yom Kippur, it's an anchor for a lot of Jewish people. It's that one time a year where you're part of the community again, if you haven't been. We welcome you back anytime. Anybody else got something? Is that Andy? Got your hand up?
Yes. Hi, it's Andy. I had a nice little breakout session with Jane Rosenston and Sharon Russell, and it started off good and it ended up great. The good part was we talked about the importance of tradition, and that yes, even though it's fasting, yes, we all wouldn't give it up, and it ended up great. And I hope it's okay for me to share. It ended up great because I think I got 2 outstanding recipes for challah. I've been trying very hard, and it's like both Jane and Sharon seem to have a non-trivial, significant, I haven't tried it, but let's just say it's coming from, what is it called when you have a painting? You look at the provenance of the painting. Well, the provenance of the recipes is very exciting. So if it turns out really good, and I think it's special, I'm always glad to share, or maybe if it's really great, I'll share with Cantavera. But everybody, I wish you all have you finish your fast well.
One is, it's funny to me that in a discussion about fasting, you guys shared recipes.
I'll take the blame. If there's going to be sin on that, it's got to be me, because I raised it, because Jane's father was a baker. Wow.
And when we were taking a class with Rabbi Ira, one of the things I looked forward to is when you showed up with the desserts. Right, so that's good. Any other thoughts there? Thank you, Andy. Anybody else got an opinion or not? I don't want to drag it out or anything, but All right. Well, I appreciate everybody letting me have a chance to run you through this and kind of look behind the curtain a bit on what it's like to sit around and talk about Talmud a bit and see how it goes. So thank you very much. Or Tov.
Thank you, Scott.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for leading us in such a phenomenal discussion and investigation of our own for why Yom Kippur. What is keeping us from throwing a party on this day with all the feasting involved? And why are we putting it off till 7 o'clock when the actual break fast happens? Thank you. Thank you very much. Our Minchah service is going to continue with some davening from Phil. So please join him and me in it. We're on page 698 for a Chatzi Kaddish. Please rise and body your spirit.
Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemerabah v'alma divrach chirutei v'yamelich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon ובחייך בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמרה בברך לעולם לעולם היה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה על שמי דקודשו בריחו לעילה ולעילה מן כל ברכתה בשירתה תושבחתה בנחמתה דמירם ימה יאמרו amen. So we are going to go to the inside back cover again, and then we will continue on page 700. Baruchu et Adonai mevarach. Sorry about that. Baruch. How's it go? Oh, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor HaNorah El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Ronei Hakol v'Zocher Chazdei Avot v'Imahot V'Golei V'Leihem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Misod Chachamim Urmonim Umilamed Dad B'minim Eftechafi B'Tefila V'Tachanunim L'chalot L'chanein B'nei Melech Malei Rachamim Mochel V'Soleach Lavonim Zochreinu L'chaim Melech Chafetz B'chaim V'chodveinu V'sefer HaChaim L'mancha Elohim Chaim Melech Ozer Mashiach U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Mafoked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Michayim etim atarav L'Hoshia Michalkel Chaim B'Chesed Michayim etim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim U'Matir Asurim O Mekayem Emunah Torato Lishene Afar. Minchah Mochal Bar Gevurot O Midam Melach Melech Mehemit O Mechayeh O Matzmiach Yeshua Mi Amocha Avarachamim Zocher Yitzurav L'chaim berachamim v'nemanata le'achayot metim Baruch Ata Adonai Mechayei hametim. Page 702. Na'aritzacha v'nakdishecha kesod siach sarfei kodesh hamakdishim shimcha ba'kodesh kakatuv al yad neviecha v'kara zeh el zeh v'amar kadosh 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 Adonai tzivahot melech al haaretz kivodo kivodo Molei olam mishartov shoalim zeh lazeh ayim mekom kivodo liumatam baruch yomeru Baruch kivod Adonai mimekomo Uyifen barachamim v'yachon ham yachadim shemo erev v'voker v'chol yom tamid pamayim me'ava shema omerim Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Hu Eloheinu Hu Avinu Malkeinu Moshiachenu V'hu Yashmienu Barachamav Shenit L'nei Kol Chai Liot Lechem Le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adir Adirenu Adonai Adonenu Ma'adir Shimecha B'chol haaretz V'haya Adonai L'melech al kol haaretz V'yom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad U'shemo echad U'b'divrei kodshecha katuv le'emor Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohai Sion Ledor Vador Hallelujah Ledor Vador Nagid God Lecha Ulenetzach Nitzachim Kedushotcha Nakdish V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipin Elohim Moshe Olam Va'ed Ki El Melech Gadol V'Kadosh Ata. We continue silently now. So following up on Scott's discussion, I at least am really a very spatial person, not special, spatial. And that, even tunes for me, have a particular space. So the tune for the Chatzi Kaddish that I usually used in Shacharit, and not sure why I do that, and I probably won't ever do it again. But it certainly then sends you off in a different direction, and it's very difficult to recover from that point. Anyway, it's nice that you're nice people. We're going to continue with the, so for me, Yom Kippur is definitely a space that we need in order to find out who we are and chart that path for the next year to come. We're going to continue with the Kaddish Shalem on page 726. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rahaba. Oh, please rise. Yalmad yivrach yiroteh v'yamlik machuteh b'chayechonu v'yamechonu v'chayeh kol beit Yisrael b'galav v'zaman koriv yimru amen. Yesh shmei rabba mevorach le'olam 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 yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'av v'yitrom v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemed kudsho brichu leila uleila min kol bechata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiram v'yalma v'yimru amen titkabel tzloton v'otahon d'chol Yisrael kadam v'hom d'vishamaya v'emeru amen yehesh shalom rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael Vimru amen. Ose shalom b'ramav, Huyase shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel. Vimru amen.
Shkoyach.
Lucia.
Shkoyach, and beautiful, beautiful mincha davening. Toda rabba. You can be seated. This concludes our Minchah service. Our Ne'ilah service starts in about 29 minutes at 6 o'clock. If you have a shofar, whether you are home or whether you're going to be in the sanctuary, bring it so we can all blow together when that final blast issues from the shofar up on the bima. We're going to join it. If you're at home also, I encourage you to have some Havdalah materials handy. We don't use the spices when we go out of Yom Kippur, but a little bit of grape juice or fruit of the vine and a candle. And that's it for Yom Kippur announcements, other than to remind us that it is supposed to be a mitzvah the moment Yom Kippur is over to start putting up a sukkah, which doesn't mean later tonight we're going to have a sukkah building party, but does mean that tomorrow at 5, Don would love it if anybody is able to come by and give a hand putting up the sukkah. Also from 5 to 7, there's a Dayenu Chutzpah phone banking. So we hope that you will participate in one or both of those worthy endeavors. Zehu, see you at 6, and Tzom Kal for the last hour and a half of it, an easy last home run stretch of fast. Thank you to Phil. Thank you to Scott. Thank you to our Torah readers, Phil and Sandra and Joy. Thank you to our Haftarah reader, Maury, for a beautiful, beautiful Minchah service.